Hi scholars, welcome back to Read Aloud. We get to continue reading another informational text and we get to learn a ton of information from our author. You guys have been doing a really good job of figuring out the different things that the authors of these informational texts are trying to teach us. Today we get to read an illustrated timeline of transportation. We know that transportation is the different ways that people move around from one place to the next. A timeline shows the number of events in an order in which they happened in time. So for example, the things that we're going to read at the beginning of the timeline, just at the beginning of the number line, are the ones that happened first. Then as we go along the timeline, we're going to see the things that happened later on until we're up until today. Let's go ahead and start reading. You might learn about some new types of transportation that people have used in the past. Long ago, humans walked wherever they needed to go. They used animals to carry loads and pull carts and wagons. Over time, people created machines such as trains, ships, and airplanes to help them move faster, farther, and higher. This movement by land, water, or air is called transportation. It is called transportation. This book is written in the form of a timeline. It lists events in the order in which they happened. Important chunks of time, such as the Automotive Age, are grouped together. You don't have to read the book from start to finish, though you can if you want to. Dip in and out. Discover how transportation has changed people's lives around the world. So I'm already trying to think about, why did people start creating these machines? Well, at the beginning of the text, it says that long ago, humans walked everywhere they needed to go. They used animals to carry loads and pull carts and wagons. Well, I know that it can take a long time to walk places, or you can't always rely on animals. Sometimes they might be tired or you might not have animals. So people decided to build these machines to help them get things done faster and go further and maybe even go higher if they're talking about like planes. So we're going to start in the ancient times. This is a long time ago. This is way back in 6,300 BC. That's a long time ago. So you can see where people started to make canoes out of hollowed logs. They began to make wooden sleds to travel on snow. People in the Middle East started using animals to pull heavy loads. People in Mesopotamia invent the wheel. They use it to build simple wagons and carts. The camel is tamed around this time in 2500 BC. It helps people travel through deserts. Why did the camel have to be tamed? Why did people have to figure out a way to control these camels? Well, it says that it helps people travel through the deserts. So people had ways to travel on water or to pull heavy things or to travel even in snow, but they needed a way to travel in the desert, and camels live in the desert and can survive out there, so they had to figure out a way to get the camels to help. The ancient Romans built one of the first systems that had a well-drained and stone-paved road. Wow, that's one of the first roads from long ago. Now we're moving on to a different time period, the Dark Middle and Early Modern Ages. We're going to try to find some of the similarities and differences between the ancient times and the Dark Middle and Early Modern Ages. So, Chinese workers began building the Grand Canal system. This was a huge waterway that they used to transport grain. Viking ships crossed the North Atlantic Ocean. Canal builders in the Netherlands made the perfect locks. And locks are the steps that carry ships up or down between the two water levels. And by this time, the Inca in Peru have built 20,000 miles of roads. These roads connected 10 million people. The first smooth riding four-wheeled coaches are built in Hungary. The design will quickly spread throughout Europe. Wow, this is already taking place in 1457. It's come a long way from way back in the ancient times. Let's stop to compare and contrast the ancient times and the dark middle and early modern ages. Well, in both time periods, people used wheels. They used wheels here on those four-wheeled coaches, and they used wheels here on the wagons and carts. It looks like, well, they did. What's another similarity that you see between the ancient times and the dark middle and early modern ages? But some of you are noticing they used animals in both time periods to help them transport different things and different people. They also both use boats, you're right. But now I think I'm starting to see a difference. What do you notice is different about this boat in the ancient times and this boat in the dark, middle, and early modern ages? You're right. They started to get bigger boats, ones that were a little bit more sturdy and made out of way more materials. And I also noticed that back here in the ancient times, they were using just the waterways that were already there. No one started creating their own waterways like they did here with the Netherlands. Ooh, exploring new modes. So now we're already in 1732 on our timeline. This is the first U.S. stagecoach line to serve the public, and it opened in New Jersey. Some of you might have been to New Jersey before. Did you ever see a stagecoach? I've never been in one, but I have seen stagecoaches in movies. Eventually, a Scottish engineer, James Watt, invents a steam engine. Steam engines will later power boats and locomotives. Does anyone know what a locomotive is? It's a train. So, more scientists like Nicholas Joseph and Daniel Boone started to come up with different ways to create the first type of automobile or car and start to kind of develop different types of roads and paths throughout the U.S. They even built the turtle. Now this doesn't look like a car, doesn't look like a plane. This is the first type of submarine, and the submarine is used to go under water. Wow, and in 1783, on June 4th, French brothers Joseph and Jacques Montgolfier fly the first hot air balloon. Wow. In England, horses start to pull wagons along these rails. This is one of the first steps to forming the railroads that we even have today. Now people are going to start being powered by a stream. This Englishman flies the first glider. It kind of looks like a plane, but not one that would hold any people. Then, on February 21st in 1804, the first working steam locomotive runs in England. It hauls 5 coal cars along 10 miles of track. One of the very first trains that we started to see throughout the world. Now, John McAdam, who was a Scottish engineer, invents a new way to build roads in Great Britain. The basics of his layered hard surface method are still used today. We drive on roads all the time to help us get places, and that idea started with this man, John McAdam. In 1816, Baron Karl, a German engineer, makes an early type of bicycle. I have a bicycle and I love riding it, so I'm really glad that this guy started to play with that idea in 1816. Laying track. That title lets me know that this section is probably going to be about trains, since trains run on different tracks. Starting in September of 1825, the first railway in England opened. It was the first steam railroad. The Erie Canal was completed in October 26, 1825. Wow. On July 4th in 1828, work begins on the Baltimore and Ohio. That was the first U.S. railroad to offer service to the public. So that means before, people weren't able to ride on the trains yet. They were just using it to transport different things. But now, people are able to start using the trains. You can see the different ways that people are starting to invent things like the bike pedal, or start to build different types of railroads that are a little bit better and a little bit longer to go farther. By land and by sea. The first wagon train of U.S. settlers begins the journey from the Missouri River to the Pacific Ocean. That was in 1841. But in 1845, the steamship Great Britain is finished, and it's the first ocean ship made of iron instead of wood. In 1858 in Paris, the first stretch of asphalt is laid. That's what we see today and drive on, all that like hard black road. Wow. By 1860, the timeline tells us that the United States has more than 30,000 miles of railroad track. That's more than the rest of the world combined. Wow. So we've already read about so many different types of transportation. What type of transportation did you think was the most interesting? Was it these wagons? Maybe it was the bike? Maybe it was train, hot air balloon, submarine? So many different types of transportation we've already seen. Let me know what your favorite was. Paving the way. So the first concrete pavement is laid in Scotland, and that was in 1865. That was a long time ago that they started building some of the first roads and pavement. Eventually, there's a canal that connects the Mediterranean and Red Seas, shortening the journey from Europe to Asia. Wow, since people started to find paths that they could travel on or in, like different oceans and seas and things like that, they were able to get places faster. We know that's one of the reasons why people started to come up with new ways of transportation. You can see here, there's the first gas-powered motorcycle in 1885. The Canadian Pacific Railway was also completed in 1885. That's the first transcontinental railroad across Canada. The Automotive Age begins. Wow, so now we've got even more people who are coming up with different types of cars. That's another word for automotive. People are beginning to use gasoline-powered cars with 3 wheels and then 4 wheels. Ooh, someone's starting to build the first truck in 1896. Wow. John Holland, who is an Irish-American engineer, builds the first modern submarine. Look how cool that would be to go on the submarine. Lots of different ways that people started to introduce the automotive. Up, up, and away. This is about to get exciting. It says that we have now people starting to invent airplanes. I can't imagine what it would have been like to go and fly in some of the first airplanes that were ever made. Ooh, so Wilbur and Orville Wright fly the first airplane at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. That was on December 17th in 1903. And on October 1st in 1908, it says that the Ford Motor Company rolls out the first Model T. The car opens the way for the average person to buy an automobile. I'm trying to think about why just every average person would even want to buy an automobile. Let's think back. Well, we know that people used to have to walk and use animals to transport things or themselves. But now, if people have this opportunity to buy a car, that's going to make their lives a lot easier. So I think everyone wants to be able to buy a car, especially the average person. Here we go. It's starting to get even cooler because now on June 14th in 1919, They made the first non-stop flight across the Atlantic Ocean. That's a really far distance that they were able to travel in an airplane. Ooh, the Panama Canal opened in August 15th of 1914. Controlling the skies. This again is another section about different types of planes. Starting in May 20th on 1927, Charles Lindbergh, an American pilot, flies nonstop across the Atlantic Ocean. He starts in New York and lands in Paris, France. On June 17th in 1928, Amelia Earhart becomes the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. In 1929, Greyhound bus lines begin service in the United States, the way that a lot of people were able to travel far. People start beginning to make power jet airplanes. And on February 8th in 1933, the first modern passenger airplane, the Boeing 247, begins its service. Moving farther, faster. In 1940, the U.S. expressways opened to traffic. On February 10th in 1942, the Ford Motor Company stops production of all non-military vehicles as the United States entered World War II. On October 14th, people began to make the first faster-than-sound flight. That means faster than sound was able to move. People were able to move to in these planes. On October 4th in 1957, the Soviet Union launched the world's first artificial satellite into space. Blasting into space. Transportation has come a long way. At first, people were just using animals and small little logs that they were turning into canoes. But now they're able to go all the way into space. It's taken them a long time to get there, though. People began to make different jets that could fly, lots of different people. People began to, like in Japan, to make the bullet train, which was one of the first high-speed passenger trains that people could ride. On July 20th in 1969, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin become the first humans to safely land on the moon. They're traveling so far. Amtrak is created in the United States on May 1st in 1971. Developing new technology. This is starting to look more like some of the things that we've seen and used today. Beginning to make space shuttles like Columbia. There's a solar power car in 1984. In 2000, Toyota releases the Prius. That's the car that was the first four-door gas-electric hybrid in the United States. On June 21st in 2004, Spaceship One makes the first manned private space flight. It was a test flight for a contest called the X Prize. Wow. On April 27th, the Airbus A380 makes its first flight. And it can carry up to 555 passengers, making it the world's largest airplane to date. Wow. So, we've got a glossary at the back of this book that could help us figure out some of the different words that we read about when we were talking about our transportation. So, scholars, that was super impressive, learning about all the different ways that transportation has transformed. You get to see here a quick little glimpse of our timeline. So today, I want you to choose to talk about one way that transportation today is similar to like it was in the past. Or you can choose one way that our transportation today is different than transportation in the past. You're going to choose to tell about a similarity or a difference that our transportation today has with the transportation in the past and share that in a video, or you can write down your answer and take a picture. I can't wait to see what you guys listen to about the similarities or differences from transportation today and transportation in the past. You got it!